Chris Greer to retire. Anthony Weaver all but certain to get a head coaching job this NFL offseason. The Dolphins season's not even over yet, and we got a ton of news to go over. Let's get after it. You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Saturday evening, January the 4th. I'm your host, Michael Oliva, flying solo today. I didn't think I'd be doing a show on Saturday night, as I thought it'd be quiet. It would be a quiet evening, the calm before the storm in the Week 18 Dolphins-Jets game at MetLife Stadium. But boy, oh boy, did a bunch of Dolphins news, especially two big stories, kind of break Saturday afternoon, late Saturday morning, early Saturday afternoon, and we got to talk about it as they involve Chris Grier and Anthony Weaver. But before we get to any of that, a quick word from our sponsor.
The DolphinsTalk.com podcast network is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive, Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you. International fans, too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com.
All right, let's get into it. But before we start, first off, if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button if you can. Smash that little thumbs up. It'd be much appreciated. Also, we are nominated for 2 Sports Podcast Awards. I'll have the links to go vote in the comments here on YouTube, and also I'll have it shared on our social media platforms. It's free. Takes a second. Be a big help. Also, Dolphins Talk Extra, patreon.com/Dolphins Talk is $3 a month. Once the season ends for the Dolphins, which it appears might be Sunday night, we're going to have free shows, of course, on the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network, but on our Patreon service, we'll have more shows about the Dolphins. Also, we do shows non-Miami Dolphins centric. I'm going to start a pro wrestling show. We got shows about reality TV, the NBA, NHL, college football. I have a show I do each week that's kind of winding down. So if you're interested in hearing Josh, Aaron, myself podcast more, sometimes about the Dolphins and sometimes not about the Dolphins, patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. It's $3 a month. Private message board as well. We also give away a ton of great prizes. Okay, so let's start with the big story. Chris Grier, CBS insider, NFL insider Jonathan Jones reported Saturday afternoon that Chris Grier, there's been a rumor that Chris Grier may retire as Miami Dolphins general manager and take a senior advisor role. So let me just read the report from Jonathan Jones for those of you who might have missed it. Chris Grier has been in the Miami Dolphins organization since 2000. He has seen 1 Miami playoff win since then, a wild card victory in his first season as a scout with the team. A strong rumor around the league during the fall was that Grier could retire and move into a senior advisor role. But many have questioned whether the 84-year-old Stephen Roth would want to conduct a search for a new GM, especially considering how well liked Grier is within the building. Since becoming the general manager in 2016, Grier has hired 3 different head coaches and gotten into 3 postseasons with no wins. The Dolphins still have a slim chance of making the playoffs this year. So that's the Jonathan Jones report. Again, Jonathan Jones, very well-respected NFL insider for CBS Sports. Does great work. And to sort of confirm this, Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, he put out on Saturday afternoon that he got 2 phone calls this past week from people around the league asking him about this Grier rumor before the Grier rumor was made public today. So this is something that's been circulating in NFL circles here for a while, that Grier may retire. And I think this is the week now, week 18, you're going to get into Black Monday where a lot of people are going to be fired on Monday. Not that Grier is going to be fired, because as we've said, if you listen to this podcast, he's not. But would he retire and open up the general manager role in Miami? And that's, the $1 million question. Barry Jackson did also point out that the fact Chris Grier was willing to trade Calais Campbell for a 4th-round pick not that long ago, first week of November, tells him that Chris Grier is not nervous about his job security, meaning he can stay on as a general manager if he wants, or he could retire and be a senior advisor. That, someone who is worried about their job would not have been willing to trade Campbell for a 4th, because they'd be all in trying to win this year at all costs, no matter what the record was at that time. Again, Mike McDaniel stepped in and put a stop to that trade, which, not a problem putting a stop to trade, but kind of tells you the dynamic in Miami, that Mike McDaniel wields a lot of power as well on who stays, who's not here, and stuff like that. But also I saw the Big O, Orlando Elzagari, who's very tight in. He said this report is nonsense and Chris Grier is not going to retire. So there are people saying that the report is false and that Chris Grier is not going to retire. But again, Jonathan Jones is very well respected, so I'm not going to just discount his report, because there might be 1 or 2 people saying it's not true. And again, if I had a gun to my head, I'd probably say Chris Grier is not going to retire. I'd probably say it's not going to happen. But again, Jonathan Jones and others in NFL circles are saying this might happen, and it has been a rumor. And I got to be honest with you, I'm kind of mad at myself. I should have thought of this as a possibility, because this is the one thing we can say about Chris Grier is why he survived so long is you can never put any of the blame on him. If they make a bad pick, well, that's what the head coach wanted. I'm just carrying out the orders of what the head coach wanted. If they make a trade, if they make a free agent signing, I'm just getting the players that the head coach wants. It's really not my call. And he has used this over the many, many years to keep blood off his hands and stay employed and pretty much fail up, get promoted up, no matter who the head coach is or who. He just stays, and kind of like a bad penny. You can't get rid of him. So I should have thought about this, because let's assume this plays out. It's true. Let's assume for a second. Talk about typical Chris Grier. He will continue to get a paycheck for the Miami Dolphins. He will continue to call the shots from a senior advisor role. He gets to hire his replacement, because as the senior advisor, advise who should be the GM. And if and when things go bad, he will get no blame. This is Chris Grier's dream job as a senior advisor, because as a general manager, you can pin some of the mistakes on him, or all of them, but some of them, and he can say, hey, I'm just doing what the head coach wants. As an advisor, he can pin it on the GM. He can pin it on the head coach. He can just collect a paycheck from the Miami Dolphins and Mr. Ross for life, and nothing will ever be his fault. So I can see why Grier would consider that, because that is, like, aside from a Supreme Court judge, a pretty good gig when the owner loves you and you're just a senior advisor where I'm just advising. They can do what they want. Don't blame me if things go bad. But that's the report. A few things here. Not surprised. He's going to be 55 years old in March. Chris Grier, he's been here a while. He's been in the general manager role since 2016. He knows that general managers and head coaches in this league get hired to be fired. And you cannot stay in that type of role forever, especially when you're not producing results. So for him to consider or think about or talk about or even take on a senior advisor role, it's pretty much saying, well, I will continue to have a job, but I'm not going to do the day-to-day grind of going to pro days and stuff like that. So I could see why it would be an attractive option for him, because he wouldn't get fired. He would have, job security forever because Mr. Ross loves him. And he doesn't have to do the day-to-day grind of what a general manager has to do. So I get it. And I know some fans are saying, well, if he does this, what general manager is going to want to come here? Who's going to want to be saddled with Mike McDaniel? Who's going to want Chris Grier looking over their shoulder all the time? You won't get a good general manager to take this job. Folks, time out. If this happens, again, if, they're just going to promote from within. The Miami Dolphins assistant general manager is Marvin Allen, who's also very well respected around the league. And they will just promote Marvin Allen, most likely, if I had to guess, from assistant general manager to general manager, and that's it. They're not going to do a big search. They're not going to go out there and get Louis Riddick, or they're not going to go out there and, try to find someone from the Lions or the Chiefs or the Ravens. No. They're just going to promote from within, and I would think Marvin Allen would be the choice. I know some fans have brought up Brandon Shore, and, they'll probably give him like an interview, but Brandon Shore is more on the business side, a finance guy, a human resource guy, a football administration guy, not really a true scout, which is what most general managers kind of are to their core. They started as scouts. They worked their way up. Brandon Shore is not that. He's a numbers, IT, human resource, football administration guy. So I'm sure he'll be considered. I'm sure they'll talk to him and sort of pick his brain. But I think they're going to go with like a Reggie McKenzie, who's also here as an advisor, I believe. Marvin Allen seems like a logical choice. Someone who's already in the building. And again, I don't know if this story is true, if this report has any legs to it. Again, for Jonathan Jones to run with it, CBS, he ain't putting it out there just to put it out there. He's not going to risk his credibility to put out a bullshit type rumor. So I do think it has some credence to it, but will it actually happen? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But again, if you're one of the many, and trust me, I'm with you, many fans of Dolphins who want Chris Grier to be gone and not be involved with the Dolphins after the season, it's just not going to happen. And if you've listened to this podcast, I have been telling you for months, Grier and McDaniel are 100% safe. Do I agree with it? No, that's reality, and I live in reality. I'm sure there's other podcasts out there who will wishcast and wish that they're not going to be here and will waste your time talking about how they're not going to be here. Folks, they're going to be here, period. And if Chris Grier retires and goes into a senior advisor role, that's more his call, not Ross's, because Ross doesn't want to get rid of him. Ross likes the guy. When it was down to Flores versus Grier and they had that power struggle, Ross chose Grier. And that's all you need to know. So, Chris Grier, say what you want about him. He hired this head coach. He's made every trade in recent years. He's run off some of the players. He's added some of the players. His fingerprints are all over this team, whether the draft, free agency, coaching staff. His fingerprints are all over this team, all over this organization, and all over the on-the-field product. And even if he goes into a senior advisor role, that's not changing anytime soon, just because they're changing his title on his business card. So, do I agree with it? No, but Chris Grier is the Miami Dolphins then, now, and forever. I mean, that's what we're stuck with. And it's unfortunate, but that's where we are. And I do wonder if this happens, again, is this essentially, senior advisor, is he pretty much moving into the Mike Tannenbaum role where he was the VP of football operations and Chris Grier was the general manager? And I know most fans don't believe Grier had any real power and Tannenbaum was running the show. And no matter how many times I say it, that wasn't totally the case. Yes, Tannenbaum had veto power, but Grier was making a lot of the calls, especially with the draft. Grier was making all the calls in the draft, honestly. Tannenbaum was making other big picture type calls like extend Tannehill, stuff like that. But I would wonder if it'd be that type of dynamic where Chris Grier is this, senior advisor who just oversees the GM and can have veto power over whoever the GM is. Another name for general manager, it would be outside, but not really. Donna Ponte, maybe as the first female general manager. She worked for the Dolphins for many years. She's very close with Stephen Ross, and she is getting general manager interviews, or she will in the next few weeks. And Donna Ponte's name's been floated out there as a possible replacement to Roger Goodell once he decides to hang it up. And there's also been some teams that have sort of kicked the tires on her to see if, she would take a general manager job. She's very well respected. Again, did she come up as a scout and stuff like that? No, but she's smart. She has a lot of connections around the league, and she listens to smart people. So, and plus, once again, she came up, well, not really came up, but she was a part of many years, Ross, Grier, that whole front office dynamic. That would be another name to keep an eye on, but I do think it'd be someone like a Marvin Allen if this were to happen, just to get promoted from assistant GM to general manager. So we'll see. But again, I know there's people out there like the Big O, and trust me, he would know, saying it's not going to happen. Chris Grier is going to stay. And there are some other people who are tied in saying this report, it might be a rumor, but it's not happening. Grier's not going nowhere. So we'll see how this plays out. But yeah, I mean, even, I know fans want him gone and just gone and not to be around the team. That's kind of not an option. He's either going to be here as a GM or in this senior advisor role, unfortunately. And yeah, that's Chris Grier. We're stuck with him. As I said, then, now, forever. Then, now, forever, Chris Grier. Man, Supreme Court justices look at Chris Grier in awe. Like, talk about a job for life. Wow. Okay, before I get to the second big story of the day, quick shout out to everyone listening at finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com, largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page, and wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Audible, or one of the other 100 platforms we're on. Subscribe. Once the season's over, we're not going anywhere. There's going to be a ton of news. Look, the season's not even over. We had 2 huge stories on this Saturday. That's going to continue, and we'll have you each and every day covered with the Miami Dolphins when breaking news and rumors are out there. So be sure you are following us. And if you're watching on YouTube, again, smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. You can see all of our stuff there. Okay, Anthony Weaver, Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator. Sounds like he might only be their defensive coordinator for one more game. Because according to Diana Rossini of The Athletic, there are reports that Jacksonville, once they fire Peterson, will have interest, and that the Chicago Bears have a lot of interest right now, and they're already doing serious homework on Anthony Weaver. Let me read what Diana Rossini is saying. On the Jacksonville job, if the job officially becomes open, which it will, I'd expect names like Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson and Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver to be connected to the Jags. Okay. The Bears one is where it gets interesting. And this is long, but I'm going to read the whole thing. The Bears are gearing up for their head coach search, and a few big names are already on the radar. Mike Vrabel, Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn of the Lions, Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores, Commanders offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, and Weaver, the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator. General manager Ryan Poles has been doing serious homework on these candidates, particularly Weaver. Sources from both the Ravens, where Weaver spent 3 seasons, and the Dolphins have nothing but praise for his leadership qualities. Currently, the Miami Dolphins rank 3rd in the NFL in total defense. The first time in 22 years they've been this high. They ranked 3rd in 2002 as well. Players have a lot of respect for the 44-year-old Weaver, describing him as high energy, emotionally intelligent, and someone who holds players accountable. While we might not have a one-size-fits-all definition of the leader of men the Bears say they are looking for, Weaver seems to fit the bill. Weaver's coaching career started as a defensive line coach with the Bills, Browns, Texans, before he was promoted to Houston's defensive coordinator in 2020 when Romeo Crennel was promoted to associate head coach. The season didn't go as planned for Houston, leading to a coaching staff overhaul, but Weaver's path didn't stop there. He moved to Baltimore, where he became the defensive line coach and run game coordinator. In 2022, he dropped the run game coordinator title and was promoted to associate head coach. He interviewed for the Commanders head coaching position last year and was considered a finalist. Many people around the league believe this is Weaver's This year, Weaver will land the big job. So, Jacksonville and the Bears are the two teams linked to Weaver right now. More teams might get in the mix, but it sounds like the Bears are really doing their homework on Weaver above everyone else, per Diana Rossini again. Diana Rossini's tied in around the league, very much so. She breaks all the news on Rodgers and stuff like that. If something's happening, she knows. And it sounds like the Bears and Weaver might be a match here. And if not, a lot of other teams are going to have interest in Weaver. And let me say this, because I know I said this a few weeks ago or like a week ago here on this podcast, and some fans were mentioning it to me today. I said a few weeks ago or like a week ago, if Weaver leaves, I'm not losing sleep over it. And I still stand by that, folks. I really do. I like Weaver. I've said that from the start. I kind of hope he stays, although it sounds like he won't. He's going to get a head coaching job. But I am not going to be crushed if he does leave and if he gets a head coaching job. He's been a coordinator twice. One time in Houston with J.J. Watt, and it was an unmitigated disaster. The man in the middle of the year went from a 4-3 to a 3-4, or from a 3-4 to a 4-3. I can't remember. It was bad. He couldn't even pick which scheme he wanted to run. This year in Miami, he's done very good. Obviously ranked third. That's great. And, no Chubb. Jaylen Phillips, he was here for like 5 minutes before he got hurt again. Javon Holland regressed. Kendall Fuller's missed a lot of games. Campbell's only a part-time player on the line. There's been a lot of navigating Weaver's had to do, and he's done fine. Absolutely fine this year as a coordinator. But that, to me, is essentially his resume. As a position coach, I'm sure he's fine. There's a lot of good position coaches. I wouldn't make a position coach a head coach without being a coordinator. And, 1 year, essentially, because it was so bad in Houston, 1 year as a coordinator in Miami, I think there's a lot of risk in promoting Weaver to a head coach. I get a lot of Robert Saleh vibes from him. Might be a guy who is just great as a coordinator and has grown into that coordinator role, but being a head coach, he might be in over his head. So I do see a lot of Robert Saleh vibes there, and that players love him. They'll play hard for him. They like him. They think he checks a lot of boxes, but might not be ready to be a head coach. Now, look, I might be proven dead wrong in time, and if I am, I'll say it. I don't care. But I think if you're a fan of the Dolphins, if Weaver leaves and if he becomes a head coach, I would not lose sleep over it. Okay? He's a good coach who's done well in 1 year. And I think that's all it is right now, and I don't think it's like a huge loss. That's just how I feel. But what stinks for Miami is that Mike McDaniel would then have to hire his fourth defensive coordinator in 4 years. And he'd probably have to implement an entire new defensive system, because I don't know if there's anyone on this staff that he would promote to be the coordinator. And if he did, that would be a big risk. I think he would probably want someone with some experience, because Mike McDaniel knows going into 2025, his ass is on the hot seat. So he don't have time to have a new coordinator, someone who's never been a coordinator before, learn on the job. He needs someone with a proven track record. I will say this, though, whoever does get this job, should Weaver leave, it's a blank slate, man. That side of the ball is such a mess. Holland's probably gone. Kendall Fuller's gone. Cam Smith is a bust. Who cares about him? Cater Kohu's had a bad year. Anthony Walker, he's going to be a free agent. Again, he's always hurt. He's not even playing on Sunday. Ogba's old. Campbell's probably going to retire. They don't have a nose tackle we're talking about. Outside of Chop Robinson, Zach Sealer, and Jalen Ramsey. I'm not going to count Jaylen Phillips because he has an ACL. He's probably going to miss the start of 2025 season. Outside of Chop, Sealer, and Ramsey, that entire side of the ball, maybe Jordan Brooks if he stays, needs a facelift and a lot of new pieces. So if you want to bring in someone who runs a 4-3, go for it. You want to bring in someone who runs a 3-4, go for it. It's not a job where I got these pieces that only fit this scheme, so I got to have a guy who's a 3-4 guy, or I got to have a guy who's a 4-3 guy, or I got to have a guy who's zone, or I got to have a guy who's only man. You got three players we're talking about. Chop, Sealer, Ramsey, maybe Brooks. I'll throw in Brooks. You got four. That's it. And those guys are all scheme flexible. So he can hire anybody, honestly. Doesn't need to hire just a 3-4 guy, just a 4-3 guy, because I only have the parts for that. He can go any way he wants in who he hires to replace Weaver. And that would be on the plus side. But again, the downside, a fourth defensive coordinator in 4 years for a head coach who's going to enter 2025 with his ass on the hot seat. That's not a good situation to be in. Maybe Robert Saleh would come in and be the replacement if we relieve. So actually, I think that probably happened. Actually, I think it would be Saleh because him and Mike McDaniel are so close. I could totally see that happening. But yeah, those are the two big stories. Chris Grier might retire. Senior advisor Anthony Weaver looks like he's going to get one of these big defensive coordinator jobs. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, Sunday, Dolphins, Jets. We'll see how it plays out. I don't think the Chiefs have any chance of beating the Broncos. Their airplane was stuck in the airport. They took off late just to get to the game. They don't care. They're sitting everybody. And then you got the Broncos who are going to be extremely motivated with a home crowd looking to just, win their way in and become the 7th and final wild card spot, which for them is a big deal from where they were last year with the Miami Dolphins putting 70 points on them and just being a total embarrassment last year to turn it around with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix to make the playoffs even as a 7th seed, tip of the cap to Sean Payton, tip of the cap to Bo Nix. They really turned it around overnight with the Broncos. And if they win, they deserve it. I don't care who the Chiefs are playing. If they win, they deserve it. And if they don't win, we'll see what Tyler Huntley, Patrick Paul, Jackson Carman can do on offense, and they can score enough points for Miami to beat the Jets. We will see. After the game, post-game wrap-up show, myself and Tom Ernest. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, or TikTok at DolphinsTalk. Visit the website, DolphinsTalk.com. Everyone have a great Saturday evening. We'll talk to you again after a while. And folks, don't forget, we must put an end to highway profanity.